Good afternoon, morning, or evening, depending on where you are and when you're watching this. Welcome to Keystroke International, a destination for readers, writers, either or both. I'm Ralph Kern, and I'm here with Jon Evans today. And today we're going to talk about his visit to the London Book Fair 2019, what the purpose of the fair is, and why an indie author might want to attend. So, good afternoon, Jon. Firstly, just outside the London Book Fair, what have you been up to for the last week or so?
The book fair itself was a bit of a rush because James, my brother and co-author, only decided to go like middle of last week, so I had to organise stuff for that. We've got to the point where we're able to announce that our first collaboration in our universe is with Paul Teague, who does the Self-Publishing Journeys podcast, and he wrote The Grid and The Secret Bunker, and he's got a thriller series that starts with Don't Tell Meg. So he's writing a military sci-fi trilogy in our Royal Marine Space Commando universe, and that's really exciting because he's well along with it, and we're hoping to have it out. Let's say have it out in the early summer. We'd like to have it out sooner, but it's until it's finished, we'll have to hold off on an announcement because we plan to rapid release the books. So we'll release them once every few weeks, and that the reason for doing that for any authors out there or fans is because it gives you more visibility on Amazon and gives you a good chance of having the books be successful. So normally we release our books as soon as they're done, but we're sort of holding these up so that we can release and keep going and hopefully gather some momentum for the series. So that's really exciting for us, because Paul is the first person that we've done an outside collaboration with. How about you?
Fantastic news. I'm really stoked to hear about the collab that's on course. So I can't wait to have a read of it come summer, I hope.
Yeah.
So what about me? Things of sort of exciting note. I've finally had the completed 3 covers back for my own rapid release series. So that's well on the way now, and I'm going to be ready to start releasing relatively soon. It's just sort of the audio side of it now that needs to be worked through, because I'm keen to have both elements released at the same time. What else? Went up to a place called Durham in the UK, where we had a wander around the city, but we went to the cathedral as well, where they filmed a number of scenes from the Harry Potter movies. The cathedral itself forms quite a lot of the sort of the external backdrops for the series. So it was quite interesting to see them as undressed sets, so to speak, and if anything, they looked even nicer, like that. What else have we been up to? Doing some plumbing. John's been hearing about my plumbing woes, and I've got a leak.
Means actual plumbing, not personal plumbing. I should hasten to add.
No, I've got a leak in my ensuite now. I had a leak originally, and now I've got even worse leaks. Mine, I think everyone's got a calling, and mine is not DIY. So I'll be shooting off after the show to see what horrendous damage has been done. But and then what else? Oh, that's something that happened just before the show. One of the readers of my first books has been just created a model of the spaceship Endeavour, which is in it, which is really, really nice, and it's lovely to see that even several years later, that book is still kind of people are enjoying it enough to go do creative stuff like that. So that's amazing.
That's fantastic. What kind of model is it? Is it like a lead miniature model or a plastic?
No,
you know, is it like a?
It looks like it's one that he sort of put together out of other components, which it probably does it a little bit of a disservice to sort of mention it like that. So, but it's basically it's this physical model that's he sort of masterfully put it together, really. And he's followed the description in the book really, really well. And I'm like looking at that, and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And I know when Jamie, the cover artist, designed the ship, he sort of went one way with it. He wanted to sort of like evoke kind of like the age of sail and exploration with what he designed, and it was a really good model or a really good design. But so is this as well. It's almost like sort of seeing like the original Battlestar Galactica and the new Battlestar Galactica. Both are equally valid, but it's really, I'm just made up really that someone cares enough to do that.
Yeah, I when I see authors, show fan art of any kind, people are always, they're always really excited, even if it's even if it's sort of kids who are just discovering art, and it's not amazing, but particularly wonderful when somebody's, somebody where you look at there and say, I would buy artwork from this person, or whatever has done something and captured your imagination. It must be fantastic. So have you got pictures of it that you can show on your social media page?
So firstly, for the Harry Potter pictures, I've got I've put the pictures on my personal my author Facebook site, and also I've just put up the pictures of that model as well. So please go take a look and enjoy. The other sort of relatively interesting aside from our visit up to Durham was on the there's sort of like a board with all the sort of various priors and bishops who've served at Durham Cathedral, and I was quite amused to see that between 1214 and 1233, Ralph Kern was the prior, and then also I was equally amused to see that we've got a friend of the show, Richard Fox, and in I think it was 1494, Richard Fox with an E on the end was the bishop of Durham Cathedral. So anyway, those pictures are up on the key. I think they're up on the Keystroke page. So please go take a look. All right. So should we go back to the big topic of the day then, John? What is London Book Fair?
Okay, well, you would probably, if you're like probably most people watching the show, I'm sure we can assume that we all really love books and find it hard to walk past an interesting looking bookshop or whatever, and probably have way more books on our pile of things to be read than we actually have time to read at any one point. So you might think it would be a fair dedicated to selling books to readers and be a book festival of some kind, but no, it's actually a trade event. So it's a trade event that's heavily dominated by traditional publishing because it's been going for quite a long time. I don't know the full history of the event, but this is the first time that I've been, and the majority of the business that's conducted there is happening between businesses. So it's happening between agents and publishing houses, and there are software companies there. There are that deal with things like warehousing solutions and so on. And we thought there might be something of interest to us in that area, but there really wasn't. All all the big publishing houses are there. So you'll see Penguin and Random House and Hachette, and Osborne Books and Wiley, who are an academic publisher, and the guys that Haynes Manuals, who do the manuals for cars, and nowadays they also do the things like the Millennium Falcon. And you'll see some of the comic book publishers there, like IDW and Titan Books were there. So really, probably all the big name publishers that you would have heard of would be there in some capacity. And ones like Hachette have massive stands. Hachette had like a spiral staircase in the middle of the room going up to a circular meeting platform, but they have lots and lots of desks around their stands in order for them to sit down and have meetings with people. So what will have happened is that they'll have booked time slots in advance with people. It's not really for you to turn up and say, hey, I've got this manuscript, do you want to talk to me about it? And it's not that type of thing at all. So it's an interesting event to attend, but a large portion of it is there for business that has been arranged well before the event, that people are going to go to organize meetings. But there is a large section that is also there for authors and indie authors as well.
Okay, so if we just summarize sort of where we're at, and because that strikes me as a good place to sort of have a split point for the conversation before we sort of go into the stuff that's of sort of interest. So if we summarize, it's primarily it's a trade show, so for the service industry side of the publishing industry, not really the authoring industry, but the publishing industry. So there's a slight difference there. Obviously, the authoring is the trade side, publishing is more the business side, and so they've got a whole ruck of things like so everything from how to all sort of printing solutions to warehousing based deliveries, getting things into basically getting things from wherever they're printed to wherever they're going to be sold, and other service sector stuff around that. So what as an author is there to draw you?
Okay, well, so a couple of more things I should mention before I completely forget. So one, it's held at London Olympia, which is a Victorian events centre, and it's pretty large. It's used for all sorts of events. It's in Kensington, which is, I want to say, I will call it West London, but if you're a Londoner and that's not quite far enough west or something, please don't have a go. It's west of Paddington, so as far as I'm concerned, that is West London, and it's near Earl's Court, and obviously it's near Kensington Palace, where I think William and Kate live at the moment, and a few others. And there's the massive Kensington Gardens thing, and the Design Museum, which one of my friends did fundraising for, as it happens, is just up the road as well. So in those sorts of parts of London, there's always something nearby to do. There's several museums nearby, and it's a big venue, but it's not one of the world's largest venues, but there is a lot of space there, and there are, I think I read that there were something like 15,000 people there each day, and it runs for 3 days. There's also a thing called the Quantum Conference, which is more of a conference. Really, it's better to think of the London Book Fair as an exhibition rather than a conference. But the Quantum Conference, they have a lot of speakers there, and I think that day is mostly just for people sitting and listening to talks and doing normal networking. But the whole event attracts people from all over the world, as does one. There's one in Frankfurt, there's one in New York as well. So a lot of meetings will be going on in people's hotels and local pubs and that sort of thing, and then drinks events in the evenings and that sort of thing. But then moving on, there is a whole section called Author HQ, which is sponsored by Amazon and the Alliance of Independent Authors and Society of Authors are all involved in that area. And then there's a number of companies that directly serve authors, like the Writer magazine they're there, and Book Baby were there, and a few others. So they have stands in a section, but it's one of the smallest sections of the fair, but it is where all the authors hang out. So if you're attending in 2020, you just need to go in the door and say, "Excuse me, where's the Author HQ?" and that will be where you will meet the other authors, and where many of the talks that go on throughout the exhibition are shown. There's they had a little stage set up for up to about 6 speakers to do panel discussions and so on, and there were talks throughout the day, once every hour and a half or so, on a whole variety of topics, and there was probably 100 people around there or more for every talk, and the rest of the time people were hanging around there talking to, the authors at least were hanging around there talking to each other. It's a good place to go and speak to Amazon as well. So if you want to speak face to face with somebody if you want to speak face to face with somebody from Amazon about how you can publish or any specific questions you have, then they're there and available, and their print on is also there. But I would imagine that you'd be better off arranging a meeting in advance with them. So yeah, it is quite interesting. It's only £45 as well to attend 3 days. If you wanted to attend the Quantum Conference, and there are a couple of other small events sort of in the area at the same time that are associated with the London Book Fair, then those have extra charges on top. But the fair itself, it's only £45 to get access for 3 days. So other than your hotel or transport costs, it's a cost-effective way to do some networking, and you know in advance when it's going to happen. So yeah.
So do you think it's worth indie authors going, or is it not mature enough yet in that sector, do you think?
Well, I wouldn't go there. I wouldn't recommend that people go there looking to looking to get lots of services or anything. For instance, Scrivener isn't there. You don't get to go and speak to the guys from Scrivener. They weren't exhibiting. But I think going forward, you'll see more of those sorts of companies will start to exhibit in the future. But bearing in mind, a lot of those companies are international, or rather, they're not based in the UK necessarily. So the value of them going to something like London Book Fair is debatable, and it's obviously easier if they're based in Europe. But what I would say is it's a great place to go if it's the only place you can go to do author networking. If you haven't been to any other kind of conference or event, it is a good place to go. It's good as well because the Alliance of Independent Authors has a strong presence there. They do, I mean, in fact, right now as we speak, they're doing their online conference where they do like a whole day of talks that they've arranged for you to watch online. Amazon and Ally have a drinks evening there, which was on Thursday night this year, which I attended, and was, you know, that's mostly talking to authors and people who are interested in the indie scene that you would meet at other conferences and things. And self-publishing show, or who used to be the self-publishing formulas, Mark Dawson, James Batch, and John Dyer. They were there because Mark was doing he was doing talks on for Amazon KDP at the Author HQ, and they do a drinks evening there. So that's a really good place to mingle as well. And other people have talks and events going on in the evenings and so on. And it's a pretty convenient place to meet up. So I think it's worthwhile. I wouldn't say that if you live in the US, you should fly all the way over there just to network with some authors, because there's not quite enough authors there. The focus isn't on writing, and the talks that are there are useful, but they're probably more useful to people who are really early in their careers. And if you listen to all the podcasts, if you listen to Keystroke Medium for a long time, or Mark Dawson's self-publishing show, or Joanna Penn or Chris Fox or whatever, then you'll be at a level where you'll find the talks interesting, but some of them may not be as useful. There were quite a few this year on audiobooks, which I know some of the people some of the authors I was speaking to found quite helpful, because audio is continuing to grow rapidly. So yeah, it's a bit of a tricky thing to answer, because it really depends where you are in your game. But the thing that remains consistent, as far as I'm concerned, is networking with other authors, getting to know people in your tribe, which is other authors, whether or not they're in the same genre as you. I think that's incredibly useful, and a face-to-face meeting with people is always better than just knowing them from Facebook.
Absolutely. So just sort of like summing up what the majority of the value of the London Book Fair is for perhaps indie author is principally the meeting of other indie authors, and then maybe if you're earlier in your career, or alternatively perhaps there's a gap in your career at this point. So I don't know, for example, you've not done audiobooks yet or something like that, then perhaps it is of value to go. The networking is always going to be of value. We know that Keystroke Medium was founded upon a kind of collective mentality, similar to the 20 books, both Facebook page and conference, which roughly speaking shares a similar ethos of a rising tide carries all the boats. But as I say, there is also some value with perhaps getting some questions answered, which in sort of very specific sectors. That being said, if you want to save yourself the travel time, there is plenty of resources online as well, which can cover those kind of things also. Keystroke Medium being one of them, shameless plug, but there's lots and lots of other ones as well.
I mean, one of the things that there is an international rights section, where you can talk to people about selling rights for your books. So that you would talk to a publisher, they would translate and then publish your book. So if you wanted to find a German publisher, London Book Fair would be a great place to go to meet them. So the convenience for these things is that all the publishers turn up there, and then they do a lot of meetings, which is obviously a lot less total travel for everybody than it is to fly to 3 different publishers to meet them. And it's always better meeting people face to face if you can. However, my understanding is from people who are further along than me, is that it's not necessarily easy to sell foreign rights, and just because you think that you're doing well doesn't mean that there's a publisher available who's going to want to pick up your rights. But what I would say you probably want to be doing with that is, if you're thinking maybe I'll attend in 2020, and one of the things I want to do is talk about audiobook rights, try and find a publisher or an agent, maybe take my self-published children's book and get it in with a children's publisher, because you think they might, you know, they might be able to push it into bookshops more easily than you, or whatever. Those sorts of things, you want to start reaching out to publishers a little while in advance, probably a few months in advance, I would think, at least, in order that you can set up meetings with people and say, you know, I'd like to come and see you. I know you're going to London Book Fair. One of the things we went up into there's on one of the higher floors, there's a section called the International Rights section. So we somewhat optimistically went up there in hopes we could find out something quite specific and useful, and, you know, what should be the next step we should take, what, you know, could we get contact with somebody and whatever. And downstairs there's these big open stands where, you know, Hachette had this massive area, and they've got bookcases all around it lined with their books, and people wandering around freely and being happy. In the international rights section, it looks more like a series of exam tables. There's just row upon row of tightly packed tables that are only wide enough for 2 people, and the chairs on either side. So it's 2-by-2 meetings, and each table is another company. So I don't know how many were there, but it must have been a couple of hundred at least, and they're all just ordered alphabetically. So there's not a section for German rights and one for European or African, you know. So you really have to know who you were going to go and look for, because the company names, that, you know, they're quite small company names, probably most of them, and there are so many of them that, you know, without knowing who you were going to speak to, you would have a devil's own job of you know, finding somebody. And then if you were going on spec, you just have to hope they weren't in a meeting with somebody already, or about to start one. And if they aren't, they're probably going to walk away from their table and go and get a coffee or something. So yeah, but network. I spent all my time with authors and the guys from the self-publishing show, and I talked to a lot of new authors there. I got interviewed for the London Literary Crawl podcast, which is a new one to me. I spoke to Kinga from Publish Drive, and quite a few sci-fi authors, yeah, I had a really good time. It was really interesting. Whether or not I go back in 2020 will depend on if there's a whole bunch of my friends going, and time isn't of any kind of issue. I mean, my brother lives in London, so going down there is an opportunity to see him as well. One thing I wouldn't do again is, so this time, because my brother lives in South London, I stayed with him rather than get a hotel, which would obviously be a bit more expensive. Although there are sort of travel lodges and that sort of thing within easy travel distance, so it's not too bad, but you probably want to plan in advance. Anyway, his place is at least an hour from the fair, and that caused me travel problems. So if I was doing it again, I'd probably want to get a local hotel, and there are plenty around, but one of the people I knew there ended up in a hotel that sounded like it was like they just deliberately tried to recreate faulty towers in the 21st century, and you know, the temperature of the room that she couldn't control, it was controlled from reception and didn't get warm until the middle of the night when it suddenly got blazing hot and that sort of thing.
Sounds like the kind of place I'd end up in.
Yeah. You think, oh, this doesn't look too bad, and you're wrong, so wrong.
All right. Okay. So, all right. Again, so summing up where we're at, and I've got one more question for you, but just summing it up. So if you're travelling there, there are plenty of hotels within easy travel distance. For those who don't necessarily know, the UK chains, Travelodge is a very affordable hotel chain, which you can pick up a room for. Well, I think it varies, but I'd suggest London will probably be £70 to £100 a night, something like that. Your big piece of advice, or your big takeaway, is make sure that you make sure you kind of scope who you wanted to see, and maybe making a bit of an arrangement, make an arrangement to speak to them before you even go. So that to prevent disappointment, and probably do a little bit of research about who you want to see over there. My next question is around: do you see the London Book Fair evolving into something that is perhaps going to be of wider interest to indies? Because at the moment it sounds interesting, but it doesn't sound particularly like something I would do unless I was down in London anyway for an unrelated thing. But do you ever see it evolving into something that might be of interest to indies?
Well, I think so, because, for instance, the Alliance of Independent Authors go there, and they're an organisation that provides services to authors and tries to fight the case for authors, provides advice, and if you don't know who the Alliance of Independent Authors are, you should probably go and look them up, because it's an association you may want to join at some point in the future, and they do offer a lot of information, and they do a lot of podcasts and advice, which are quite useful, and sometimes are on topics that aren't covered by the main marketing shows and so on. So they should definitely be on your sort of Rolodex, he says, dating himself, of sort of places you might want to look for information. You can get to speak to Amazon. Name an event where you can get to speak to Amazon. You can't. You have to go and find an event where they are. You can't just go and phone up Amazon and speak to somebody until you end up with a contact. And probably the way you got your contact was to be somewhere like one of these events. What I'd also say as well, if you're interested in attending events, then look out for, I think they probably run them in the US, but they certainly run in the UK. They run the Amazon Author Academy events, and they run them in different places in the country. I went to one in Newport. Actually, it was outside Newport. Nobody would run an event in. That's me. It's not very likely that many people would run an event in Newport, but it was held at a large conference hotel outside Newport, and those events are free, and they're very focused on, well, they actually do two things. They have an event for people selling on their marketplace, selling widgets and shoes, whatever they're selling, and then at the same time they run the one for the authors, which is, again, it's great for newbies, but it's also great for networking with authors, and it's free. Apart from traveling there, it's a free event. So those are good to look out for, and I think they run one every couple of months in the UK. I presume they're running them across the US, but I can't give you any specifics about that. I think it's valuable for people to go to the London Book Fair. Ally have a very strong presence there, so you can pick up all sorts of information from there. A few of the talks are more interesting than others to me, but it will depend on where you are and what you're writing to some extent. But I think the book fair will gain a stronger indie presence as time goes on. Kobo were there, and I think as the industry changes, you will definitely see more indie stuff there, but it will take a while, and I think that my my sort of 5 to 10 year prediction is that 1 or 2 of the big 5 companies will go bust, because I don't think that their business model is particularly sustainable, because to date they haven't really reacted well to the existence of e-readers. I think they're an industry that is likely to be facing a seismic shift. So it would not surprise me if 1 or 2 of them fell apart. And I also see that a lot of the most business-minded indies are creating bigger and bigger companies, and some of those companies provide services to authors. So when they're ready, they might start attracting more people at these kind of events. What I would say though is, if you're looking to go to your first sort of author event, that's a big one. I don't mean, certainly join your local group of authors if you can. I would only personally bother doing that if they were indies, if they were people who are. I'm not interested in a group where people just get together and go, yay, we write, but they have no intention of publishing books, and are just, let's finish our books and then we'll go through the trad publishing route. That doesn't interest me. But if you can find a local group of indies or set one up, that's a good way to meet people. But the big events and the conferences are worth making an effort for. I have been to I've been to three of the 20 books conferences so far. I'm going to Edinburgh in the middle of the year, and I should mention that last I looked, there were a couple of tickets left for 20 books Edinburgh, and there will likely be 1 or 2 coming free at some point when somebody inevitably has to cancel nearer the date. So if you're in the UK, and that's a very good one to go to in July, and then they'll be in Vegas again. So I'll be at those 2. That'll bring me up to 5 plus 1 Author Academy and the London Book Fair. And we're going to talk more in depth about the writing conferences hopefully on next week's show. But yeah, for the London Book Fair, I think it's worth attending if you can. If you want to talk about things like the international rights or to the publishers, again, make sure you have meetings in advance. But you can come and talk to the people from Ally, and they bring along authors like Mark Dawson and Orna Ross, who runs Ally, and LJ Ross was there. I saw very briefly saw Joanna Penn there, but I think she was only. I want to say she was only there for 1 day, but she might just have not. I just might not have seen her. And I spent some time with. Yeah, she could have been avoiding me, which I wouldn't have blamed her for. I saw Michael Andley and Judith Andley as well there. They were there for a lot of meetings with people. So they were having proper organised meetings with people. So that frankly, if Michael's going to turn up there and thinks it's worthwhile, then you should have in the back of your mind that maybe one day it'll be worthwhile you turning up to try and have those kind of meetings. But it's always great to talk to other authors, I think. It was great at 20 Books Vegas last year, and a lot of us were there for a full week. And the reason that a lot of us did that, other than the flight costs can be helpful, is that talking to other authors is great, even if they're not in your genre, because most of the things that you want to talk to authors about are pretty much the same for all the genres. It's only specific plot type things that vary a bit. The story structure is story structure, and marketing is marketing. Yeah, I would strongly encourage people to go. But if your choice is between a writing conference like 20 Books and a writing and a marketing conference for writers is probably how I describe 20 Books. They're not really running conferences about writing craft, for instance.
Okay, just to sort of like sum that up, you kind of think that probably 20 books is probably more specific for an indie, although there is value in going to the London conference.
Yeah.
Should we just hit the show sponsor for as well? Just while we're here. So the show sponsor for today is Kingdoms of Iron and Stone, which is brought to you by Keystroke Medium. Heroes are not born, they're forged. Kingdoms of Iron and Stone is an anthology of monumental proportions, featuring a collection of epic fantasy-themed stories by some of today's best authors, edited by two of the best editors in the business, Campbell and Lauren Moore. These 14 stories of knights, wizards, thieves, and dragons will take you on an incredible journey through many amazing worlds filled with great characters on unforgettable adventures. It's got a foreword by the massively esteemed Michael J. Sullivan, and it also features Rick Partlow, KSI, Chuck Manley, C. Stephen Manley, one of the hosts on Keystroke Medium, Nathan Heisted, a good friend of mine, Paul Summerhayes, Dean Floyd, Munro Todd, Kayleen Williams, another one of Keystroke's presenters, Wayne Ligon, Cassidy Taylor, Blake Arthur Peel, Amanda Kay, James Evans. Is that the James Evans?
That is the James Evans, yeah.
James Evans. So the brother of John, and another good friend of ours, and Keystroke presenter Scott Moon. Okay, so please pick it up. Right. So next week's episode, we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about 20 books to 50k, and whatnot. But have you got any closing thoughts on the London Book Fair?
Yeah, I had a good time. I got to see people I already knew, and I made quite a few new contacts and friends. And I, in general, I think that's very worthwhile. You shouldn't be spending your last £45 for your author budget on going to the London Book Fair. You should spend that on getting the next book out or something like that. But if you can afford to travel there and spend, you don't have to go for every day either. You could just go for one day. And of course, if you're in the UK, London isn't too hard to travel to for the majority of the population of the UK. But it's also a good place to arrange a meeting with another indie author if you want as well, because there are so many there. I mean, I went out every evening. I was out with a whole bunch of authors. That is one of the things I would say. The advantage of staying reasonably close to the centre, rather than say with a friend or family member in London, is that it makes it easier to attend the author events. I could have stayed a bit later at a couple of them. Oh, and another pro tip is they have a pretty extensive cloakroom there. So if you've got a heavy bag with you, don't wander around with it all day like I did, because you'll just wear yourself out for no particular reason. And the cloakroom wasn't expensive, so that was a kind of a mistake I made. But it was, yeah. Ooh, I'm totally out of focus now. Sorry about that, folks. Well worth attending, and I will. I'm looking forward to talking about other types of conferences that I've been to next week. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right then. Thank you very much, John. For people watching, please don't forget to subscribe, and also visit us on Facebook and on keystroke.medium.com, where you can buy loads of gear and swag. And right, well, I said hello. Do you want to say goodbye?
Yeah, absolutely. I know how to say goodbye to people, and it doesn't entirely throw me that, yes. So our topic next week will be, it'll follow on from this episode, as I've said. We'll talk about other writing conferences, and we'll try and give you some idea as to why authors, whether they're indie authors, hybrid, or traditionally published, should make an effort to go to conferences and events. So be sure to come back and join us next time as we talk about reading, writing, and everything in between right here on Keystroke International. Night, folks.
Good night.